Today, Anna will be sharing her insights on the evolving relationship between QA and software engineers. Let's give it a warm welcome to Anna.
Let's travel back together to the lovely year of 2013. 2013, 6 years before COVID, the iPhone 5 was released, the movie Gravity is showing in the cinemas, and Tony Abbott became a Prime Minister of Australia. Yeah, I know, but it's a reference point. At that time, I was working in a company called realestate.com.au. I hope you guys know this company very well. It's a platinum sponsor for this conference. At that time, I was working in a team called Business Systems. We had 4 developers, 1 QA, 1 BA, 1 delivery lead. The good old cross-functional agile team. But we were working on very old and legacy software at that time. We were writing a software for our employers of our company. They were basically accountants, call centers team, and financial department. They were old and legacy even back in 2013. Seriously, it was a nightmare to make any changes in those code bases. For some stuff, we didn't even have the code bases because they were written by external consultants who forgot to put them in Git. I remember our production environment was literally like the Windows virtual machine boxes physically hosted in data centers. And when I first time logging into that, I saw gigantic label on the desktop saying, please do not restart this machine or any running processes because we don't know how to run it again. I was like, great. We have no idea how those were configured in the first place. I guess some of you in this room are old enough to remember the times where we treated our production environments as pets. Groom them, take care about them, like my precious environment. Please don't break on me. I know I'm ringing a bell with some people. Okay, let's make a quiz of the audience. Who remembers here expression pets versus cattle? Raise your hand if you ever heard this expression. Okay, a few old schoolers, but looks like half of the audience. For those who didn't raise the hand, pets versus cattle, it basically was a software analogy to deal with the environments. Don't treat your environments as pets, groom them, maintain them, configure them, be very precious about them. But just shoot them in the head if they show any signs of weaknesses and spin up a new one. Treat them like cattle. I mean, horrible analogy for animals, so please don't do it with cattle. But it worked very well for the software industry. And that notion migrated very nicely into cloud services with Docker and Kubernetes. But back in 2013, we were still grooming our pets in data centers. I remember it took me 2 weeks to configure my local dev environment, only to realize that I can't run the half of the systems there. Well, because for some of them, we don't have a code bases, and another part of them completely incompatible with MacBook operational system. For our QA in our team, it was even worse, because the designated QA environment was literally QA's laptop. So every day when we piled a bunch of work in ready-to-be-tested column, our QA needed to get their laptop, download the latest build from Jenkins, which was our CI tool at that time, install on his or her machine that was nothing like production, and pray to Windows gods that it will actually work. And we were piling those builds and those packages like crazy. On average, we had 5 or 7 builds ready to be tested on a daily basis. And we were nagging our QA to test faster. It was golden times for me. As a developer, I was free of any responsibility to ensure the quality of my software. I mean, I would always take a credit for successful feature delivery, but if there was any problem, there were always ops people to fix it and QAs to blame for it. It was like being a child. I'm doing what BA told me to do. And like having QA in your team is very convenient. Like when my delivery lead is asking me, oh, why we missed the deadline? I was like, well, it's not my fault. Someone should have tested faster. Or why we had so many bugs in production recently? I was like, well, someone should have tested better. Somebody approved that build, not my fault. Golden times. I remember the first QA that I ever worked in that team in 2013. Well, let's name her Lisa. So Lisa was great, but she was a little bit of a revolutionary. She wanted to have a standalone, easily replicated QA environment that was something like production. She wanted to talk with us as developers, and she wanted us developers talk to each other. And she wanted all of us participate in kickoff, because she said that quality should be responsibility of the whole team, not just QA. You see, a revolutionary. It was a total revolutionary ideas back then. So I remember one time when we had, I think, the whole team present in the kickoff, and Lisa came as well. Well, she invited herself. But anyway, we're standing in the kickoff, and our BA is saying, okay, we have a new piece of work for our team. We need to add a new column on the financial report for our accountant. I heard 5 words, and I was like, okay, my brain is thinking, new column, okay, where I'm going to get the data, how I'm going to write the migration script, how I'm going to drag that in 5 different databases to that end report. And I'm already thinking about that. But Lisa, keeping asking questions, how often it's going to be used, who will use that, where is it going to come from, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I was like, do we really need to ask all these questions in kickoff? Can we just go back to our desk and start working on migration script? We're wasting our time here. The task is very clear, new column on the report. Yeah, it's time consuming, but it's very clear. Even our BA was not able to answer all the questions from Lisa. So then she suggested the unthinkable. Invite the actual client in the kickoff. Imagine that, the actual client in your kickoff. Well, it was our accountant, and it was 6 years before COVID, so we all worked in the same building. So our BA went and fetched our client. I thought, okay, this kickoff will never end. My hands already itching for the migration script, so I just tuned out. I just stand there, it's okay, I'm pretending that I'm kind of here, but I'm already writing migration script in my head. And then at some point, Lisa said this, well, it looks like all the raw data that you need to generate this column is already present on your final report to our accountant. So just add another column in your Excel spreadsheet, write this function, and voila, it's there. I was like, what just happened here? We don't need to write the software anymore? I was like, can we just solve this problem with Excel? I was like, I feel offended. I'm a software engineer. I solve problem with the software. You see, she was a revolutionary. Well, luckily for us, her ideas were too radical for our agile team and agile processes, so she decided to move to another team. We hired another QA. Let's name him Jim. Jim wasn't that radical like Lisa, but he was very detailed-oriented. and very enthusiastic about his work. I don't think those are the good qualities for QA in our team. So my regular interactions with Jim look like this. I'm sitting, at my desk developing. Jim comes. Hey, Anna, I found a defect. I was like, firstly, I'm very annoyed because QA dared to distract me. Secondly, I'm very annoyed at his gigantic smile. And thirdly, I hate the word defect. I mean, come on, can you just say the problem, a bug? I don't know, the defect sounds very, not software kind of thing. But anyway, I was polite. So normally I would say something like, oh, really? And he would be like, hey, Anna, look at my laptop. So when I push this button, this error happens. It's a defect. Jim, it's not a defect. It's the functionality that we choose to ignore. Nobody ever pushes this button. Seriously, our call center teams got trained on the day one to not push this button. Everybody knows it's not working. Please go back to your desk and test the features that we currently deliver and ignore the rest. You already spent like 15 minutes on my card, and I need to deploy today, so hurry up. As you can see, it was very annoying to deal with Jim and QAs at that time. So developers in my team preferred to keep Jim behind the wall. Well, not literal wall, obviously, like we couldn't build that in the middle of our team area. But we had like developers' desks, and we had Jim, and then we put another desk in between us. And we just put a bunch of old screens and a bunch of books there, It was like, aspirational wall, aspirational border between USA and Mexico, to keep developers happy, safe and sound. And QAs were paying for it by experiencing like massive job dissatisfaction and having like a very bad work-life balance. I personally call it our agile wall, because I was maintaining it with the books about agile that my delivery lead and QA recommended me to read. For our clients at that time, our clients, I prefer to keep behind the virtual wall called Zendesk. As I said, at that time, we were writing software for employees of our company. And our call center teams and our financial teams, they really didn't like our team. When I say they really didn't like our team, I mean they really didn't like our team. Because we had horrible clunky software where they needed constantly re-enter data. It was crashing every half an hour. And it couldn't even handle 30 people using it at the same time. So because of that, our call center team needed to take turns. And that significantly increased their workload. So sometimes they had to stay in office very late, sometimes in 11 p.m. or something. So imagine dealing with 30 angry and very tired people, no, thank you. I prefer to keep our communication totally asynchronous via Zendesk. I mean, now if you think about it, it probably was a very good repetition for the COVID times. But, that was 2013. Unfortunately, in 2014, things changed. Because our team grew bigger, we had more budget to hire more developers. Unfortunately, we didn't have budget to hire another QA. So at that time, our delivery lead told us that now developers need to be involved in testing. And I was like, no, thank you. You're asking me to do extra work without giving me extra money. Well, unfortunately, it wasn't my decision anyway. So we got together with developers and like, okay, we will need to test each other stuff, or should we test our own stuff? Well, we decided it's better actually to test each other code changes, to avoid the bias towards your own software. I was like, cool, fair enough, makes sense. But as a developer, I was very lazy. I was very lazy. I didn't want to install somebody else's code on my laptop, run it, testing it. I was like, too much. And because I was a developer, I realized that I can just look into someone else's code. And I can tell is it good or bad. I was like senior engineer at that time, so I was like, I know the difference between good and bad code. I mean, nowadays you call it code reviews. But, back in 2014, it was perfect testing strategy. It worked very well for me. I was very fast too. No, that's bad, that's good, yeah, cool, done. Unfortunately, the quality of our software did not improve. And I thought, look, do we even need to test it or worry about quality? We have like 50 people in our company who are actually using it. They will tell us what's wrong with that. And if we don't want to fix it, we can always tell them not to push that button. I mean, what's the point of testing anyway? As a developer, I didn't even know what they're doing with our software, to be honest. I knew, like, I'm building a bunch of forms that BAs tell me to do. They enter some data there. I don't know what data, like, what they're using for, what's the most common use case, when they start, when they finish. Like, not my problem. Not my problem. I'm focused on delivery, I have a very tight delivery deadlines. Like, I remember one time, like, during this period where we were required to do our own testing, I was working on UI feature, and according to my delivery lead, I took a very long time working on it. So she asked me to deliver it like on the same day. So in the morning, I was writing a bunch of JavaScript, and afternoon, I ran it once on my laptop, and I went downstairs to our ops team to deploy it. Because back in those days, in my team, developers didn't have access to production. So all of our deployments were done by our operational team. So I go downstairs, like I see the first ops person in my line of sight. I come in, like he's already busy with some other BA from our team, but I cut through, I'm like, hey, I need to release this build now. And the other BA was very polite, so he let me through. So while I'm standing there and waiting for ops person to do their magic, these BAs look at me, and he said, you must be a very meticulous person. And I was like, why? And he's like, well, you're a developer. If you put comma in the wrong place, like the whole thing will crash. The whole application won't work. Obviously, that BA was not from the technical background. I was like, nah. Like, it's 2014. We have fancy IDEs, we have unit tests, we had code checks. The missing comma will not find a way to production. It's not going to break anything. I was like, nah. Like, those bugs are in the past, like long gone. That was the problem of the 90s. 30 minutes later, I deployed my build, I came back to my desk, enjoying a cup of tea. My delivery lead comes to me and says that I need to go into call center team because the whole thing just crashed, 30 people cannot work, and they're all seeing the white screens. I'm like, I panicked. I jumped on our production application on my laptop, open it up, it's all good. I can see the login screen, I log in, it's there. So like, okay, I guess I will have to face our clients for the first time. So I took a deep breath, and I went into that Dungeons of Dragons. Well, the first thing that I saw there is 30 very, very angry people looking at me. Secondly, I see that they all using the Windows laptops. And they all running our application in Internet Explorer 7. I was like, none of our developers had Windows laptops. We never bothered to install Internet Explorer on my Mac. I'm like, no, thank you. And because I did make changes in JavaScript, I forgot stupid semicolon. And Firefox browser knows how to deal with the missing semicolon. So I haven't seen anything on my machine, but stupid Internet Explorer 7 doesn't know how to deal with the missing semicolon. So it's just crashed the whole thing. It was a very embarrassing moment in my career as a software engineer. And I thought it's all this BA's fault. I'm like, seriously, like, what are the chances of that coincidence? It wasn't comma though, but it was a semicolon. I was like, this BA definitely knew something. I should never talk to him ever again. So I decided to move to another team. I thought it's time for me to go and design some software not for the employers of our company, because soon it will be very dangerous for me going in and out from the office. So let's fast forward to the year of 2015. Well, guess what? Tony Abbott is still Prime Minister of Australia, which, as I understand, it's not very common for Prime Minister of Australia, but anyway, he's still there. I think the iPhone 6 was released, and the biggest news at that time was that Johnny Depp brought some dogs to Australia illegally. Like 2 dogs. I remember 2 fluffy dogs illegally. But for me, it was a brand new team, fresh start. So it was a small team again, but for the first time, we were working on something that not only used by our employees, but also used by the general public. That project was called the auctions result. Like, you can still see it on realestate.com.au. If you go at the certain address at the web page, you will see basically all the properties that got sold over the weekend, and you can see them there by state and by suburb. Internally, we call that project domain-driven development. Because at that time, our competitor Domain had their auctions result released on Tuesday. And ours were released on Wednesday. So not many people visited our website to look at those results. And our CEO at that time decided that it's not good for business. Not good. We should do better. We should do better even than Domain. We should release ours on Monday. So my team was instructed to build a very brand new experience so we can release on Monday. As you can see, this project had a very tight deadlines and a very motivated product person. And for me, is that like at that time, in that team, we didn't have the QA. So I was like, oh, shit. Now I need to make a software that actually works and looks good. Because before, I didn't care how my software looked. I mean, employees didn't complain. I mean, they probably complained, but who cares? Like, it looks bad, fine, but you know, it still allows you to do your job. But it's not going to fly with general public. Plus, I didn't even care that the whole thing was working. You know, I could always tell them what button to press and not press. So it was a new experience for me, so I had to learn a lot of skills, not forget to test an Internet Explorer and other mobile devices and different browsers. And I remember the first version that we released of the auctions result that we were very proud of, that we released them on Monday. We put all of the properties that were sold in the same state in one page. So it was like indefinite scroll. You literally needed to scroll the web page for 3 minutes to get to results in St. Kilda. And our QA at that time, our CEO, quickly picked up the imperfection of that user experience and very quickly provided our team constructive feedback to add pagination ASAP. But the pagination wasn't our biggest problem at that time. Well, because the deadlines for the project were very tight, like we couldn't fully automate our data pipelines. So in order to release the results on Monday, we needed a volunteer, a developer, to babysit the process on Sunday afternoon, to run all of the data synchronous jobs and build the web pages and manually release them. And obviously not many developers wants to volunteer to do a release on Sunday. But we needed to work on pagination first. The user experience is the king. Cool. So we added the pagination. I was like, now let's work on automation and stop babysitting those results. But our CEO had a different idea. She gave us constructive feedback that we didn't put any advertising on those pages. Well, makes sense. You want to put there something that kind of brings money to the company who will justify the salary that they paying you. So all good. So we're like, OK, let's add the advertising. So during the week, we were working on UI features. And during the weekend, we were babysitting the release. For the first time in my life, I felt myself on the other side of the wall. I was like, now as a developer, I'm not the main person in the room. The customer is a king. In order to please my customer, I have to pay now and experience a massive job dissatisfaction and, have a messed up work-life balance. But honestly, going through that experience, I think I built some empathy for my previous colleagues. I definitely built more empathy for the QAs that I had on my team, and definitely more empathy for all the people that were using the software. A year later, another restructure happened. And I end up in a totally different world. That time, I joined the team who was working on the most profitable, the most important, the most user-faced part of the realestate.com.au, buy, rent, and sold section. I mean, that was totally different world for me. I joined a very big, very awesome cross-functional team. Actually, some of the people from that team are still here in the audience, so I will try to be, how can I say, I will not name any names, and I'll try to be just telling my experience at that team. So in that team, the quality was embedded in every step of the process. Literally, I've never seen a team before and all the processes oriented on quality. I was doing performance testing, load testing, security testing. I was taught about accessibility. I was like, what's accessibility? And they're like, well, we need to make sure that our website can be used by blind people. I was like, oh, cool. It's a totally different thing. You can't just write a random JavaScript that's, I think it's the reader for the blind person who will read the page, and if you do it very badly, it's not going to do a very good job. And I was like, yeah, makes sense. Plus, different mobile devices, different browsers. I remember our tech lead at that time, he made sure that we write our testing strategies before we even write a line of code, because it was very important to think about the user experience. And we couldn't break anything. We could not afford to have any downtime. So our deployment processes was seamless. It was continuous delivery, but at that time we already had Docker and AWS cloud services. So it was a well-oiled, perfect machine. even though you can say like, oh yeah, you had a very strict processes and you need to make a code changes in pairs and you need a code review and you need to run all the suite of tests and you need to test everything on your local machine first before you can commit it to Git. But surprisingly, like we were still delivering stuff very fast. Like I always thought that if we sacrifice, if we do more testing and stuff, we're going to sacrifice the speed of delivery, but it was not the case in that team. Maybe because we had a very good quality champion there. So let's name her Monica. Monica was our quality dictator. She made sure that developers won't slack on testing. Like her official title was Senior QA. But her job was basically to teach us to embed the quality. She was always teaching us, think about your user, think about your client. And Monica was running like weekly bug bashes. So every Wednesday afternoon, even random people who ended up in our team area needed to take part in those bug bashes. Because if you skip one, Monica will hunt you down. And we would take a device, like iPad, a mobile, or a laptop, and we would literally go through every user flows on this device to pick up like tiny imperfection. And I remember like the one time I was testing something on a small mobile phone, and I realized that as a user, I actually use it just with one hand. And then I realized that the thing in the tiny right corner, I can't actually reach with my thumb. And I said, hey, Monica, do you think it's a problem? And she's like, yeah. Like people with tiny hands, like you will have to use two hands. But on the whole idea of the mobile phone that it's very easy to do it with one hand, well, unless you have like, I don't know, iPhone 15 Pro or something. Like with my hands, you can't reach there. But yes, like it was up to those points, like those kind of the imperfections that we were picking up there. Even like, oh, our scroll is too fast, or it's too slow, or it's like it needs to kind of give you like a nice feedback. Yeah, so we had those bug bashes every week, and we were picking up this stuff. And I think after a year in that team, I felt like I became a quality champion myself. I mean, thanks to Monica and our delivery practices, I was like falling asleep and waking up thinking about accessibility, usability, security, scrolls, different buttons, like how it's going to look on a big screen, on a small screen, if you're going to resize that. And like, I think I started building empathy towards my users because I realized that, you're building software for humans. And sometimes when you think the software should be used like that as a developer, you will see how the people is actually using it, and they doing totally different stuff. Like if you saw that video when everybody like puts the cubes in just one shape, because it's like when we build the software, we build like a certain user flows that we think make sense. But when we give it to user, they don't follow our user flows. Like they don't know what user flows we built for them, so they just find their own. But yeah, I think thanks to Monica, I realized that, I learned that, and I embed it in everything that I do. And since 2021, I no longer work in that big red company, but I still appreciate and cherish everything that I learned there. In my current company, in my current team, we don't have QAs. We don't have QAs even in our functional org, because developers require to think about performance, usability, accessibility, etc. In my current company, we serve maybe around 50, 70 million users in the US, and they trust us with a very important thing, their money. So now, I guess, I think about quality assurance as trust. Do you want to trust this company? Can you trust this company? Can you trust the company to do the right thing? To be secure, to be functional, or to be accessible, to be agile? And if you don't, well, you will get Optus and Medibank. You know, like one little thing that they missed during the delivery process in security or something, like it caused a big breach of trust. And it's very difficult to rebuild that. And for my company now, for Cash App, we can't afford it because we deal with people's money. If they don't trust us, they're not going to give us their money. And I think until artificial intelligence will conquer the world and take our jobs, we still work in the industry where humans write the software for other humans. So as humans, we still need to assure quality. Like, do you want to have a different role for that, or a different person, or you want to teach everybody all of the joy and all of the good practices of the quality assurance? Well, it's up for individual team and individual company to decide. That's my personal take on it. And thank you very much for listening. Please deliver a good feedback to me and constructive one to me. Technically, we have like a Q&A section, but it's fine. You can just take a mic and just do your comment, just blob about, like you don't need to ask me any questions. Unless you work for realestate.com.au. And you had no idea that I will be talking about the team and our delivery practices today. Yeah, we have May running with microphone.
Hi. It was a very nice topic. I think I really liked the way you just brought everything to life. Thank you for that session. My question is not about that session. It is about your handle. I really was intrigued to know, like, why Survival Woman ID?
Yeah. OK, thanks a lot for asking it. Like, first of all, I'm very lazy. You probably know this about me. And actually, my first talk that I've ever presented at any conference, it was in Agile Australia in 2015. And my talk was a survival guide for women in IT. So it was basically a bunch of instructions how to survive in IT industry if you're a woman. And I created that Twitter handle for that talk because I took all the 20-minute slot that I had there, and I had no room for questions. And organizers told me, well, you need to provide some way for the people to give you feedback. And I decided to create a Twitter account. I think it wasn't the best idea at that time because I was hoping that everybody would write there, oh, awesome talk, yeah, nice. But it was a very hot topic in 2015. Like, surprisingly, in 2024, it's still a hot topic. But yeah, that's for the candle. And I published a book that's called Survival Guide for Women in IT. Yeah, thanks. I did it during the COVID time, so it's only accessible in Kindle, because I said I'm too lazy to format it very nicely so you can have a print copy. But bear with me, in a few years I will get and the book is full of the illustrations. I think if you enjoyed this illustration, it's my illustrator from Ukraine that I work with, and she's very kind to help me with the book and all my talks. So if you ever see me talking again, you come to my talk, you'll get an awesome illustration and me blabbing on stage for whatever time slot the lovely people normally give me.